Hello and welcome back. I'd like to focus on malice. The judge defines it in his judgment for case 3SA991 at paragraph 35 as lack of honesty or bad faith and not simple inaccuracy or even carelessness. He further writes at paragraph 229, in the case of each defendant, the defense would be defeated if malice is shown. At paragraph 231.2, to establish malice, the claimant must show the desire to injure him or her was the dominant motive for the defamatory publication. And 231.3, if a person publishes defamatory material without any belief in its truth, that is generally conclusive evidence of expressed malice, and a person who does so recklessly, without considering or caring whether the defamatory matter is true or not, is treated as publishing material they knew to be false. I've shown you in videos 3, covert involvement, 5, an honest expression, 6, mental health smears, 9, natural and ordinary meaning, 10, the consistent thread, 11, quoting lies, and 12, lies, the lies humanist Mrs. Bing and skeptic Dr. Lewis spread about us, and the total disregard for the truth that they had. But their malice extended beyond this. As people well versed with Steiner education, which is also known as Waldorf education, and anthroposophy, which is the philosophy that drives these schools, they knew how the school our children went to had treated us wasn't an isolated incident. The following are a handful of statements written by other survivors of that education system, which both Mrs. Bing and Dr. Lewis were fully aware of. I heard many stories as to why children and their families were to blame for situations that led to their leaving our Waldorf school. I sometimes heard the parents' side of the story, but usually gave the school the benefit of the doubt because I was one of those people who thought the school was wonderful and could not believe that any school could be capable of the things the parents claimed had happened. Then it happened to my family, and then I heard the lies that were going around the school. That's when I learned for the first time that truth and integrity, things I value, were not valued at our Waldorf school. Many parents are referred to in negative terms behind their backs. They turn the victim and the victim's family into criminals worthy of expulsion. They literally demonize the whole family and create gossip and injury to the children. Those raising concerns were vilified to the point where their continued involvement with the school became untenable for them and for many others. And as Mrs. Bing said herself, in Steiner you often hear about it. In Edinburgh, apparently, a child's arm was broken. I'm not sure if that was ever reported, but I was told that the family, who of course complained, were ostracized by the school community. I show more examples of Dr. Lewis's position on Steiner schools in video 5, An Honest Expression. All of this goes against everything they've said about our situation since Mrs. Bing decided to vilify us. Since then, they've spread the idea that, solely in our case, the school, which is part of a system that regularly demonizes those who raise concern, hadn't done anything to our children and was right to get rid of them. I would argue that there was also malice on the part of the defendants and their friends when they attempted to sabotage our human rights mediation with the school. Yes, that's right. People critical of these schools worked to undermine our efforts to get resolution for our children through a human rights process. Mrs. Bing tried to find a way to jeopardize our human rights mediation, discussing the matter with her friend Alicia Hamburg. If someone was to suggest to the Commission that they are unsafe, they'd be doubly unlikely to support a legal case. To which Alicia replied, "Problem is, I think, that to suggest this, you might have to reveal who you are, and Angel and Steve would have the right to know this too. Personally, I wouldn't risk it. They'd go after you for libel." The solution they reached just a few days later was writing a blog post attacking us, but mostly my wife Angel, called Angelic Disharmony, which both Mrs. Bing and Dr. Lewis commented on, offering their support while spreading more lies about us. The three original attackers, which I explored in video 3, Covert Involvement, Alicia Hamburg, Diana Winters, and Pete Carrascos, were there for another helping of attacks and insults. In the blog post was a link to the school's website. They were hoping that by clicking on that link enough times, that blog post would appear on the school's website analytics, That's a feature designed to tell a website owner who visits their site and from where. In planting that link, their plan was for the school to see the link to that page, hopefully visit it and read it, and use the attacks within it against us during mediation. Such underhand tactics from supposed skeptics and humanists, and especially from people who claim that these schools are dangerous, is truly contemptible. But that's not all. With his witness statement for the trial, Dr. Lewis provided a list of documents from disclosure he would be relying on. The very first one was the page the school published reneging on the human rights settlement they had just signed with us. Yes, that's right. This influential skeptic, who publicly says these schools are part of a deceitful cult, and who says things like, "My own research on Steiner suggests nothing should be taken at face value when looking at anthroposophical institutions," was happy to use a letter the school wrote going back on a legally binding settlement in order to justify his attacks on my family. Finally, at a talk he gave in Cardiff in 2014, Dr. Lewis was asked, if these schools were as bad as he says they are, why aren't there more testimonials from people about what goes on there? His response was that it's hard for people to get a voice. Considering how he's treated us, parents who did speak out about how a Steiner Waldorf school treated their children, and even managed, despite his efforts, to get a landmark human rights settlement, is it any wonder? And yet, despite all of this, the judge decreed at paragraph 238 that the assertion of malice on the part of the first defendant are no more than assertions, and there is no credible evidence to support it. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.